Hi, this is my evidence model tree from Contemporary World. So let's begin by talking about the most important events from the last 3 decades. So the fall of the Berlin Wall was on November 9th from 1989, 5 days after 500,000 people had gathered in East Berlin in a mass protest. This protest made the Berlin Wall, dividing communist Germany from West Germany, crumbled. This was such a big event because Germans could finally have freedom in their country and they could see their families or friends that they had not seen for years because of the Berlin Wall. The Berlin Wall, it's still in Germany. Obviously, it's crumbled. It's so broken and it doesn't work anymore, but it's there just for visitors to remind them of history and what their country had been through. Dissolution of the USSR, 1991. The dissolution of the Soviet Union was the process of internal disintegration within the USSR, which began with growing unrest in its various constituent republics, developing into an incessant political and legislative conflict between the republics and the central government. And this ended when the leaders of three primal republics, which was the Russian SFSR, the Ukrainian SSR, and the Belarusian SSR, declared it no longer existent. 9/11 attacks of 2001. This tragic event was a series of airline hijackings and suicide attacks. These attacks were committed by 19 militants associated with the Islamic extremist group Al Qaeda against targets in the United States. This is by now, and probably the last, I hope, the deadliest terrorist attack on American soil in US history. Now we have the Facebook launch on 2004. As we all know, Facebook is a huge social media source nowadays. And Facebook actually marked the beginning of social media, which is a huge priority thing nowadays. And I thought this was important to remind because this leads to the digital era. Haiti earthquake from 2010. This earthquake was devastating. It hit at 4:53 p.m., some 15 miles, which is equivalent to 25 kilometers southwest of the Haitian capital of Port-au-Prince. The initial shock, or the first hit, however you want to call it, registered a magnitude of 7 and was soon followed by two aftershocks of magnitudes 5.9 and 5.5. So it was so devastating. This brought economic crisis. The whole Haiti was destroyed and a lot of deaths. It was terrible. Artists and famous people, leaders, started reuniting and donating and creating causes to help Haiti. And even now, until this day, it's not like they're completely back to normal. They're still suffering the consequences. Climate Action Plan from 2013. So, in this year, President Obama releases the Climate Action Plan, designed to cut carbon pollution in America, prepare the U.S. for the impacts of climate change, and lead international efforts to combat climate change and prepare for its impact. And currently, COVID-19 that started in 2019 and it's still going on in 2020. So, the coronavirus disease, which is the COVID-19, is an infectious disease caused by a newly discovered coronavirus. So, for some symptoms, most people infected with the COVID-19, aka coronavirus, will experience mild to moderate respiratory illness and recover without requiring special treatment. But then there's people that do need special treatment and have to go to hospitals. This virus is deadly. It affects everybody. But older people are the ones who suffer more with the COVID. And since it is extremely contagious, it led us to quarantine. We have been under quarantine for 8 months and it's not ending anytime soon. Now let's talk about the definitions of globalization. Globalization is when people or businesses from all around the world start establishing connections internationally. Terrorism is when a violent action is done against people or properties or to shake a government for political or social reasons. Also, there are 6 types of terrorism, which is the new terrorism, state terrorism, dissident terrorism, religious terrorism, ideological terrorism, and international terrorism. Unipolar world. This happens when one state has most of the cultural, economic, and military influence. Unipolar system possesses one big power and don't have competition. And the digital era, which is the 21st century shift from the Industrial Revolution to a new economic domination of information technology. So, why did the globalization emerge? Well, to promote inherent wealth among all countries in the world. What caused the terrorist attacks of the 20th century? Well, some have to do with religion, and others to show their power over a country or state and what they're capable to do. And this is where all of the 6 types of terrorism come from. How does the end of the Cold War relate with the unipolar world? Well, after the Soviet Union collapsed, the newly emerged Russia was financially weak and in debt, so it didn't have too much power to intervene in matters of the world. And America, on the other hand, had lots of financial resources and could still carry on its interests across the world. So America had the power. How has the digital era influenced today's society? Well, digital media is now integrated in much of what we do, almost everything, improving our productivity and facilitating how we interact and communicate. Like school wise, we are able to do things so much easier and faster with a computer or even the smartphones. As well as at work, everything is becoming easier and easier. Social wise, we are able to connect with people from all around the world through chats, videos, video calls, etc. And we can inform ourselves with everything happening around the world daily. Economically, many people don't count with digital benefits, but sometimes governments help these people by giving them their digital resources because it's so necessary nowadays. Like, we are literally growing into a digital future. So, yeah. So this is the end of my evidence model tree from contemporary world. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.